There is a black speck on your kitchen table right now. You shake it onto your eggs without thinking. You grind it into your steak without a second glance. You have done this thousands of times. But that speck, that tiny, wrinkled, unassuming black dot, once drove men to madness. It built cities that still stand today. It sank ships heavy with gold. It started wars that redrawn the map of the world. It made kings beggars and beggars kings. That speck is pepper. And the story of how it got to your table is not a story of flavor. It is a story of empire, of slaughter, of greed so vast it swallowed continents whole. The Romans paid for it in silver. The Portuguese killed for it. The Dutch committed genocide over it. And you paid $3 for a plastic grinder at the grocery store. But before you twist that grinder again, you need to know what that peppercorn cost. Because the price was not paid in money. It was paid in blood. Rivers of it. 12,000 years ago, a vine began to climb in the steamy darkness of the Western Ghats, a mountain range on the southwestern coast of what we now call India. The vine did not know it would change history. It only knew the heat, the rain, and the need to reach toward the light. It wrapped itself around teak trees and waited. For millennia, it waited. The forest around it teemed with creatures no human eye had yet seen. Tigers moved through the undergrowth. Monkeys screamed from the canopy. And somewhere in that chaos of green, the vine produced fruit. Small. Round. Green at first. Then red. Then, when dried by fire and sun, black. The people who first found these fruits did not know what to call them. They did not know that one day, empires would fall because of them. They only knew that when they crushed the dried berries into their food, something changed. The food lasted longer. It tasted sharper. It felt alive on the tongue. They called it maricha, the Sanskrit word for something that bites back. The name was fitting. Because this fruit would bite the world, and it would not let go. For 3,000 years, the pepper vine grew only in this narrow strip of land. A strip barely 200 miles wide. The rest of the world did not know it existed. The Egyptians built pyramids without it. The Greeks wrote philosophy without it. The Chinese built walls without it. Pepper was a secret. A secret kept by monsoon winds, by impenetrable jungle, and by the people who harvested it. And secrets, when they finally escape, always cost more than anyone expects. The first empire to fall in love with pepper was the Roman Empire. And like most love stories, it ended in ruin. The Romans did not discover pepper. They bought it. They bought it from Arab traders who bought it from Indian traders who bought it from the harvesters in the Ghats. By the time a single peppercorn reached a Roman kitchen, it had traveled 4,000 miles. It had crossed the Arabian Sea on wooden dhows. It had crossed the desert on camelback. It had been taxed by 3 different kingdoms. And the Romans paid every price. They paid because pepper was magic to them. In a world without refrigeration, pepper masked the taste of rotting meat. In a world without medicine, pepper was believed to cure everything, from constipation to insanity. Roman cookbooks from the 1st century are obsessed with it. One recipe calls for pepper in fish sauce, in wine, in eggs, in every vegetable, in every sauce. The Romans did not eat food. They ate pepper that happened to have food around it. The poet Martial wrote that a man who could afford pepper was a man who had arrived. The philosopher Pliny the Elder, the same man who would die watching Vesuvius erupt, wrote something stranger. He wrote that pepper was the one thing that connected the rich and the poor. The rich used it to show off. The poor used it to survive. Both needed it. Both paid for it. And both were being drained. By the time the Roman Empire reached its height, it was spending millions of sesterces per year on pepper alone. Historians have calculated that a pound of pepper in Rome cost the same as a month of labor for a skilled worker. A single dinner party for the elite could consume pepper worth a soldier's yearly wage. The empire was bleeding silver into the east. And the east was getting richer. The Romans knew this. They knew they were being bled. But they could not stop. Pepper had become necessary. Not a luxury. Necessary. And that is the moment when a spice stops being a spice. That is the moment when it becomes a weapon. The Romans never conquered the pepper lands. They tried. They sent ships around Arabia. They sent armies toward India. But the monsoon winds were too strong. The jungles were too thick. The Arab traders were too clever. So the Romans did the only thing they could do. They kept paying. And paying. And paying. Until the silver ran out. Until the empire cracked. Until the barbarians came not because Rome was weak, but because Rome had spent its strength on black berries from a forest it could not find. When the Visigoths sacked Rome in 410 AD, they demanded a ransom. The ransom was not gold. It was not land. It was pepper. 3,000 pounds of it. The Romans paid. They paid because they had no choice. Because by then, pepper was not a spice. It was the blood of the empire itself. When Rome fell, pepper did not fall with it. Pepper never falls. It simply waits for the next empire to need it. After Rome, the Arab traders became the gatekeepers. They did not grow pepper. They did not harvest it. But they controlled the only route that carried it to the world. And control, in the spice trade, was everything. The Arab merchants built a system so perfect it lasted 700 years. They kept the source a secret. European buyers were told that pepper grew in forests guarded by serpents. That it was harvested by pygmies. That it was protected by dragons. None of this was true. But it kept the Europeans from going to find it themselves. The Arabs bought pepper in Indian ports for almost nothing. They sold it in European ports for 1,000 times more. The markup was not greed. It was survival. The journey from India to Venice took 18 months. Ships sank. Pirates attacked. Monsoons destroyed cargo. The price had to account for everything that could go wrong. And everything did. But the system worked. For 7 centuries, the Arab traders moved pepper across the Indian Ocean, up the Red Sea, across Egypt, and into the Mediterranean. They built cities on this trade. Cairo became rich because of it. Alexandria became powerful because of it. Venice became Venice because of it. Venice.
The system works.
The city of canals.
The system has always worked.
The city of
For
merchants.
700 years.
The city that would one day control the pepper trade so completely that it became the richest city in Europe. But Venice did not grow pepper. Venice did not harvest pepper. Venice simply controlled the gate. And the gate was worth more than the garden. By the year 1200, Venice had a monopoly on the European pepper trade. A monopoly enforced not by armies but by contracts, by bribes, by the simple fact that no one else knew how to get pepper from India. The Venetians charged whatever they wanted. And Europe paid. England paid. France paid. The Holy Roman Empire paid. The price of pepper in London was so high that only the nobility could afford it. Common people used substitutes, herbs, mustard, vinegar. But everyone knew it was not the same. Everyone knew that real pepper was power. And power was expensive. This was the world for 700 years. A world where a single spice was controlled by a handful of merchants who never left their counting houses. A world where the source of the spice was a mystery so complete that maps showed pepper growing in paradise itself. A world where empires rose and fell based on who controlled the pepper route. And then, in 1498, a man named Vasco da Gama sailed around the tip of Africa. And the world changed forever. Vasco da Gama did not find pepper. He found the route to pepper. And that was enough. When his ships reached the Indian port of Calicut in May 1498, the local ruler laughed at him. The gifts da Gama had brought, wool cloth, coral beads, metal pots, were worthless in a land that traded in gold and silk. The ruler asked what Portugal wanted. Da Gama said one word. Pepper. The ruler smiled. He had pepper. He had more pepper than da Gama could carry. The journey took 10 months. When he arrived in Lisbon, the cargo was worth 60 times what the voyage had cost. The King of Portugal wept. Not from joy. From the realization that his tiny kingdom, a sliver of land on the edge of Europe, now controlled the direct route to the most valuable substance on earth. Portugal went mad for pepper. The king sent fleet after fleet. They built fortresses on the coast of India. They seized ports. They burned Arab ships. They did not negotiate. They took. Because pepper was not a spice anymore. Pepper was empire. And empire does not ask. Empire takes. By 1510, Portugal controlled the pepper trade of the entire Malabar coast. They forced Indian rulers to sign exclusive contracts. They banned Arab traders from their ports. They created a monopoly so complete that the price of pepper in Europe dropped by half, and Portugal's profits doubled. The Portuguese built an empire of pepper that stretched from Lisbon to Goa to Malacca to the Moluccas. They built it with cannons. They built it with fire. They built it with the bodies of sailors who died of scurvy, of malaria, of battles they did not understand. The mortality rate on Portuguese pepper ships was 30%. 1 in 3 sailors never came home. But the ships kept sailing. Because the profit was too great to stop. And then Portugal made a mistake. They got comfortable. They built palaces in Lisbon with pepper money. They bought art. They bought titles. They forgot that empires are not built on comfort. They are built on fear. And the Dutch were not afraid. The Dutch did not discover pepper. They stole it. In 1595, a group of Dutch merchants formed a company. They called it the Dutch East India Company. It was not a company in the modern sense. It had navies. It had the power to wage war, sign treaties, and execute prisoners. And it had one goal. Pepper. The Dutch arrived in the East Indies with a simple strategy. Undercut the Portuguese.
Yes, Captain.
Buy directly from the growers. Eliminate the middleman. And if anyone objected, kill them. The Dutch were efficient. The Dutch were ruthless. And the Dutch were about to commit one of the greatest atrocities in the history of trade. The Banda Islands. A tiny cluster of volcanic islands in the middle of nowhere. The only place on earth where nutmeg and mace grew. Nutmeg was pepper's cousin. It was worth even more. And the Dutch decided that no one else would ever control it. In 1621, the Dutch East India Company sent a fleet to the Banda Islands. The commander was a man named Jan Pieterszoon Cohen. His orders were clear. Take the islands. Eliminate the native population. Replace them with Dutch-controlled slave labor. And never, under any circumstances, allow another European power to grow nutmeg. Cohen did his job. The native Bandanese, 15,000 people, were massacred. Those who survived were sold into slavery. The islands were repopulated with slaves from other parts of Asia. And the Dutch planted nutmeg trees everywhere. They drenched the islands in blood so that nutmeg could grow. And then they did something even more brutal. They destroyed every nutmeg tree outside the Banda Islands. They burned orchards in India. They sank ships carrying nutmeg seedlings. They created a monopoly so complete that a single nutmeg in Amsterdam cost more than a house. This was not trade. This was not business. This was the industrialization of genocide for the purpose of spice. And the world watched. England watched. France watched. Spain watched. And they all did the same thing. They formed their own companies. They sent their own fleets. They committed their own atrocities. The pepper trade became a race to the bottom. A race where the prize was a black berry, and the cost was measured in human lives. By 1700, the Dutch controlled 70% of the world's pepper trade. They had built an empire on bones. And they called it commerce. Empires built on pepper always fall. Always. The Dutch Empire fell because pepper could not be controlled forever. In 1770, a Frenchman named Pierre Poivre stole nutmeg seedlings from the Banda Islands. He smuggled them to Mauritius. He planted them. They grew. The Dutch monopoly was broken. Not by war. Not by treaty. By a single plant in foreign soil. This is the secret of pepper. It is a plant. And plants do not respect empires. They grow where they are planted. They spread where they are carried. And once they spread, control is impossible. The British understood this. After the Dutch, the British took control of the pepper trade. But they did something different. They did not try to control the source.
Good morning to you, sir.
They controlled the market. They built plantations in Malaya. They built plantations in Sarawak. They built plantations anywhere the vine would grow. And they flooded the market. The price of pepper collapsed. By 1900, pepper was cheap enough for working-class families in London. By 1950, it was cheap enough for everyone. By 2000, it was so cheap that restaurants gave it away for free. The empire that had once cost a soldier's yearly wage now cost nothing. And the world moved on. Vietnam became the world's largest pepper producer. Brazil became second. India, the original home of pepper, became a minor player. The Western Ghats still grow pepper. The same vines. The same monsoon rains. The same tigers in the undergrowth. But the people who harvest it earn pennies per pound. The traders who sell it earn dollars. The companies that brand it earn millions. And you pay $3 for a plastic grinder. The same grinder. The same pepper. The same black speck. But the story behind it has been forgotten. Buried under convenience and plastic and the illusion that some things are just food. Pepper was never just food. Pepper was empire. Pepper was war. Pepper was genocide. And now, pepper is invisible. You are going to eat tonight. Maybe steak. Maybe eggs. Maybe soup. And you will reach for that plastic grinder. You will twist it. You will hear the crack of the corns. You will taste the heat on your tongue. And you will not think about the Roman Empire. You will not think about the Dutch genocide. You will not think about the sailors who died of scurvy so that you could have this moment. But now you know. Now you know that every time you twist that grinder, you are touching history. You are touching empire. You are touching the darkest chapters of human greed, compressed into a speck so small you could lose it in your palm. The world has moved on from pepper wars. We have new wars now. New empires. New greed. But the pattern is the same. Something small. Something necessary. Something we cannot live without. And the price we pay, the real price, is always hidden. Always forgotten. Always buried under convenience. So the next time you see that black speck on your table, remember. Remember what it cost. Remember who paid. Remember that empires have fallen so that you could have this moment. And remember that the next empire, the next thing we cannot live without, is already being fought over. Somewhere. Right now. While you eat your dinner in peace. This was the history of pepper. A spice that bankrupted empires. A spice that built genocide. A spice that you can now buy for $3. The question is not whether the price was worth it. The question is, what are we paying for now? And who is paying the real cost? Subscribe. Because the next story is already waiting. And it is darker than you think.